Hey, what's up YouTube, Skybadger here, and as per fan request, I'm back with a little video on some of the basics of Call of War. So to start with, I'm just going to go over how to win the game. So if you go into your newspaper, depending on the game, it will say control X amount of points for victory. So what are these points? These points can be gained by capturing territories, or provinces as they're called in the game. Cities are generally worth more, resource producing provinces are worth slightly more occasionally, but capitals are generally worth the most. So if we have a look at this territory here I've already captured, we can see that Berlin is worth 12 of these victory points, Hamburg 8, Hanover 2, and some of these provinces that don't even have anything aren't worth any at all. That doesn't necessarily mean you don't want to capture them. At the same time though, even though a province may not have anything, it may still be worth victory points. So if you gain, in this case, 654 victory points, the game will end at the next day change. But there is one other way to win, and that is if everyone else in the game goes inactive, but 3 players, those 3 players can choose to resign, ending the game then and there. So that's how you win. Now straight off the bat you'll start with a fairly good amount of resources. This game here is on day 8, so it's not a good representation of a day 1 scenario. So where do you want to spend those resources? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to begin production of some type of troop, because you're going to be in war pretty fast. So generally what the main players do, big players, strong players, is we start by building barracks in our cities. So in this case, straight off the bat, I built a barracks in London, Plymouth, Birmingham, Manchester, and Glasgow. And once those were done, and I had researched level 1 infantry at the same time, I'd start producing troops. And then immediately after that, I'd start building infrastructure in these cities as well. And the reason we're building infrastructure is so that when we then research armor, at the next possible point, armored car and light tank, we can start to produce light tanks as soon as possible. Now, although not everyone does this, you'll find that a lot of the stronger players do. Light tanks are a game changer because they are very good against infantry. So what happens is everyone starts the game with heaps of these infantry units, and everyone then makes the shift to armor. So you need to make that shift to armor as well. It's also good at some point to research the anti-tank and anti-air, as you'll generally need those. It is also worth researching an air force as well as a navy, but we're just going over the basics. So if you want a basic all-round army that can defend and attack, you need some anti-air, some anti-tank, some tanks itself, and just some regular infantry. So that is what you should be building off the start. Now it is also worth noting that over time you do need to build in your resource producing provinces. What you need to build here is infrastructure. Infrastructure will allow you to increase your resource production depending on the level by up to 50%. Now you might not think that's that much and it's that important, but as the game goes on you can already see that right now I'm only making 93 oil per hour. And yeah, so every day I'm making 4,000 oil, and yet just through my units I'm consuming half that, so that leaves me with very little. So imagine what would have happened and what scenario I'd be in right now if I hadn't have already upgraded both the resource producing provinces I've captured. I'd have very little. So it is important that you also try to upgrade your economy in conjunction with your troops. So don't build an army you can't feed, or else you're just gonna lose the game. Yeah, easy as that. So the next thing is how to manage attacking. So straight off the bat, you're going to start with a reasonably large amount of land, and it is pretty important that you attack straight away. Now in this case here, I moved straight down into here and captured what was, I'm pretty sure, Belgium and the Netherlands. Although I could be wrong, my geography is pretty shocking. So I captured these provinces down here to get a foothold in here. I also decided to go up and capture land up here and capture some land in Denmark. Now, one thing all these territories had in common is they were under AI control. Now, some players, experienced players, generally jump straight in and will attack another human player, and while that is okay to do, for new players I don't recommend doing it, as you'll likely get your ass handed to you. So jump in and attack these AI players, okay? And keep your forces grouped, send your forces as a group, as one stack, and to create a stack, just send all your troops to the same place, like these are here, and they'll automatically stack, okay? And from there, just by dragging them to the location you want to send them, you can get them to march there. Now, if the territory is allied or under your control, you can't attack it, but if it's under enemy control, that lightning bolt will appear. That means they are going to attack there and they are going to fight. So, when you're going up against the AI, generally what you will see is just infantry units and maybe an anti-air. And a good rule here is 2 of your infantry will defeat one of theirs. So if you see 1 infantry, it's wise to send 2. If you see 2, I'd recommend sending at least 4 to take minimal casualties and to be as effective as possible. You're not going to win a 1v1 because, as you can see here, the defense value is higher than the attacking value, so it's important that you attack with superior numbers. Now, at the same time, that does also mean that if you are being attacked, fight a defensive battle, and remember to push forwards when you have the opportunity. Holding a line is good until that line breaks. So as you hold that line, if you get the opportunity to, push forwards. Another good thing to talk about is the market. Now, although this is late in the game, so there's not much available, generally in the first few hours of the game, if you're quick, you can exploit the market to actually make money and get some really cheap resources. And this can come in handy later on. So, with that out of the way, there's another thing we really need to talk about: morale. And I wasn't going to cover this, but I thought I may as well. So, many players start off with the map looking exactly like this. And this is good, and it's fine. Many players play like this. But if you go down into the cog, and you click the cog, go to display morale, and you can all of a sudden see a totally different picture. And what this map is showing is it's showing the morale of each province. And the morale of a province affects the resource production by quite a bit, I may add too. For instance, 5% of morale here can account for 200 oil a day. So if I lift that by 5%, I can make another 200 oil a day, which goes a long way. So having morale map on is a good way to see where you need to lift morale and where you need to station troops to stop provinces from rebelling, and where you need to focus your economic aid and where you need to build fortresses to try increase morale. So to manage morale, a few tips are: don't fight more than 2 players at a time. That's bad for morale. Make sure all your food production and all other resource production is positive and you don't run out. That will increase morale. And make sure that you don't spend too much time fighting over the same province, because that is shocking for morale as well. As you can see here, this province where we've been back and forth fighting is down to 5%. And lastly, don't lose your capital. Your capital is very bad for morale if you lose it. But if you capture an enemy's capital, that's good for morale. So just to show you how effective this morale map is, just by looking at the morale map right now, I can tell you that Yugoslavia has been fighting in Nuremberg and Brno very recently, as well as fighting has occurred down here and all the way through to where his new capital is down here. So what this would infer to me is that he has a high concentration of troops in this area, and due to fighting down here, he's likely to have some here as well. But because of the fact there hasn't been much fighting down here recently, and his morale's pretty steady, I'd say not much has occurred. He may have some troops stationed here, but not as many. So by having a look at the morale map, you can read your opponent, and you can see where they're more likely to have troops and where they're not. And you can also see what sort of state their economy is in. If you, for example, look at your opponent like this right now, you can see that they look like everyone else. But if you go like this, you can see that Yugoslavia, for example, has bad morale throughout his core. His morale is dropping. Some of his main core producing provinces, which are the provinces you start with, have pretty low morale. So he'd be making pretty much very low amount of resources here and not producing at a maximum efficiency. But if we go up and we have a look at Poland, we can see that Poland's core is bright green. Poland will be producing a lot of resources right now, so he is a more fearsome foe. You wouldn't want to attack him. But Yugoslavia, he's red all over. He's not looking like a good opponent. So he is the one you'd want to attack. So those are my basic tips for Call of War 1942. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. And I'll hopefully see you in a few of my other comment sections maybe.